Signs. Marvellous piece of music it is. And delighted to still have that indeed as our intro. That goes back to 2018, of course, and Pope Francis's visit to Ireland for the World Meeting of Families. Marvellous event. Still have all the newspaper cuttings up on the wall here in the studio. If you're able to visit someday when all the restrictions subside again, come up and you can see we have a collage on the wall here of all the lovely moments, the pictures from the various newspapers, bought them all and just cut and paste them all and put them up on the wall. It's a nice remembrance. And that hymn, that beautiful song, accompanies the World Meeting of Families there. So good morning, big shout out to you all here on Radio Maria Ireland. Father Eamonn McCarthy is my name, the priest director here since, where am I, how long am I here now? July 2017, coming up in 4 years here. And we have seen tremendous growth, absolutely fabulous growth here on Radio Maria. And including this marvellous video contraption here and this whole video concept. All of this is growing and moving and so on and so forth. So we do love the interaction, and I think this is a key element of Radio Maria anywhere in the world, that you as our dear listeners and friends, you own this radio station. This radio station belongs to you in the same way that your parish church belongs to you. You can walk in anytime you like and pray, and thank God that we can certainly still do that. And please don't stop visiting your local church. And the same way here in Radio Maria, you can tune in, tune out anytime you like, according to your own disposition, your own time, your own temperament, whatever programs suit you or not, no bother at all. We're delighted to just keep broadcasting for you all the time. And with that too, the invitation is open constantly to you to engage in the conversation. Simply be part of the discussion here with us in Radio Maria, part of the formation with us in Radio Maria. So thanks indeed for all of you and your support and your fellowship and your journeying with us here. We do appreciate that very much indeed. Let's see, Ian has put a few little items down here. I just want to step off a little bit from the homily this morning and that first reading in the Acts of the Apostles, where the high priest of the Sanhedrin is tackling Peter head on, Peter and John, I suppose, and interrogating them and giving out to them. And I was just mentioning how you can break down the argument there. And when we were in the seminary, one of the very interesting topics we discussed and covered was logic and rhetoric, I suppose. But logic, very useful if you have a mathematically inclined mind. It's a piece of cake. It's a walk in the park. I enjoyed it thoroughly, having my engineering background. It was a doddle. It was one of the only exams that you could do very well in if you were good at maths. Remember, there was one student, it just wasn't his thing. Maths was not his strong point, and he couldn't hack it. He just found it very difficult. Try as I might to try to help him along, but I just found it so easy. It was an exam I finished early and had no bother with. But it's a very interesting study, and when it comes to argumentation, it's worth it. It pays dividends really to see what are the various tricks and tools and the structure of an argument. So in general, you would have a syllogism. In a syllogism, you would have a premise A, premise B, and then a conclusion. That's the structure of if such and such, then such and such, or if such and such, and then if something else, then conclusion. And the basic structure of an argument follows much those same lines. But there's various forms of argument then that are worth keeping attuned to. And I would say this holds absolutely for any secular source of conversation or debate that you're listening to. And this would be my tip to you, just to be extra mindful that, as I was saying a little earlier, that this conversation or this argument is generating light rather than heat. And so what we saw in the Acts of the Apostles this morning, the high priest was having a go at Peter. You disobeyed us. You've been preaching this message about Jesus everywhere, and you want to land the guilt for the death of Christ on us. So it's the two things that were going on there was the guilt tripping, first of all, and we're the victims. Now, when have you ever heard that before? You will hear that time and time again in many moral arguments nowadays. And certainly in our own country, we've had our share of all kinds of arguments on serious moral issues. And where do you see the loading for the argument, except mostly in the emotional side of the discussion, the emotional debate? And it's what do they call that in magicians? Like sleight of hand or misdirection. It's like, here's what you're supposed to be talking about, but oh, look over there. And what about all this over here, and over here, and over here, and over here? And not the point in question. Deflect everywhere. Another great trick, another very subtle but great, and just keep your ears and your mind in tune, your ears open. Just the change in language, the change in a few little terms here and there will. It's extraordinary what the way an argument can be twisted when the language is changed, the words are changed. So invariably in this, just to give one or two examples, invariably in this country, anybody who's pro-life, that's our designation. We want to be known to be pro-life and to be addressed as pro-life. Will never be addressed or known as that in secular argumentation, particularly secular media. You will always be called and always labelled anti-abortion. And why is that? Stop and calmly reflect on it and ask, why would they call us what we want to be called? Whereas, anybody who's pro-choice, they'll be called pro-choice. Because isn't it good to be pro? It's good to vote yes. It's good to say yes to everything and to be positive and pro. And that's the logic. You twist the language and you distort the logic of it. You distort the meaning. And you bring her. So those who are anti-abortion then are seen to be negative. And when we have to vote no. And isn't it a terrible thing to have to vote no? It's a psychological spin and twist. And it utterly avoids the truth, and the actual conversation that ought to be had. It doesn't matter what you label people. What is the truth? You can label me anything you want, I don't care. But what is the truth? The truth is the sanctity of life in the womb. So that's a typical, misnomer, or a use of language, a distortion of the logic and the premises of the argument, to deflect, to misdirect, to confuse, to obfuscate, to muddy the water. Another interesting term as well, and again looking at it calmly, and now that we're not in the middle of this debate at the moment, I'm just emphasizing the point for you, the role of logic and reason in finding our way to the truth. So another typical one is the term that's used, crisis pregnancy. And you stop to go, hang on now, just a second, let's just break this down as a means of having a conversation in relation to this issue. A pregnancy in and of itself is the gift of new life and the blessing of new life. That is not a crisis. That's the most beautiful thing. It's a gift from God, as we certainly as believers would welcome every child as a beautiful gift of God. So a pregnancy, a mother expecting a baby, is not a crisis. The crisis actually is in the support that this good mother ought to receive and should be receiving and needs. If you want that's really where the crisis is. So it's crisis in maybe want of support or health concerns, financial concerns. How will it be possible to bring this baby to birth? Who will care for it? So it's not the baby's fault. It's not the pregnancy. And seldom will the word baby be used anyway. It's another interesting one. So that's just a couple of simple examples of how the logic and how argument can be misdirected away from truth. So pregnancy is a beautiful, beautiful thing, the gift of new life. It doesn't matter how conception takes place at one level. When you consider first and foremost and put the child at the very heart of the conversation. Indeed, it does matter in cases of rape or incest, that you certainly have to address other major issues there too. But the life of the unborn child is innocent and is a pure gift regardless of the circumstances. And if we obfuscate or miss that truth, then again, who loses? Certainly the child's life is very vulnerable in those circumstances, and the woman deserves every possible support, especially when there's been an awful trauma, such as rape or incest, for instance. That these are terrible, awful crimes, and so the woman needs even more support than ever in those circumstances. But again, my point is not we can address those maybe in greater length, and maybe there are better qualified to address the dynamics of all of that morality and the support a woman needs and mother needs. But my point just for today is just how the argument is structured, that emotion can weigh in heavily and the truth can be obfuscated. Again, if you want to look back on our YouTube channel, and we probably posted up on Facebook ages ago now, one of the early videos that William Tuke did with us. William is still working away on all our video content there. And one of the early videos William did, I titled it "Words Are Not Enough." It's had quite a few views. And again, this is another way of breaking through the argument. So if, for instance, you don't rely on words. So here's Peter before the Sanhedrin, the high priest, and bring along the man who was cured. And let's turn our attention to him now. Let's get over your issues that you have with me and being aggrieved and being hurt and everything else. Here's the man, and you know this man, and you know he was born a cripple. You know the state he was in. And now look, here he is jumping and dancing, and his legs are fine. Now you explain that to me. In other words, that you kind of bring an image, you bring a reality into the conversation. Then the heat, you take the heat out of it and the misdirection out of it, and you come to the core truth. Now bring that up to date and bring it into our own world, I suppose, of conversation and debate. How often, ask yourself, how often in secular debates have you ever seen an image of an unborn child? So on that video, "Words Not Enough," I think I have in my pocket here, I use it in school. Did I bring it in? I did. My little model of a human embryo. Let's see how close I can get to the camera with that. And perfectly formed. And so, you just get one visual. How often have you seen that? If you're looking on Facebook and YouTube now, how often have you seen that image put before you? Just a 10-week-old baby, perfectly formed, hands and feet, eyes, nose, mouth, heartbeat, everything is there. And that's the actual size. Oops, sound effects there as I dropped it on the table. Fortunately it's solid so it won't break. And it's just beautifully created, and this isn't a blob of tissue, it's not a blob of cells, this is reality. So when you're presented like that then with an image, all the conversation ends really at that stage, all the debate ends at that stage, because there's no denying but that this is a human life. So whatever about all the emotional, again, heat that might be generated, you come back to the truth, and a visual image can very often bring conversations to or debate to an abrupt conclusion. There's a truth there, and the truth is revealed. You see the truth, and it's set free. So no longer, you look at this beautiful image of an unborn baby, and that's not a crisis. Do you know what I mean? That's not a crisis. The crisis is in what the mother has to contend with. So allow the argument and the debate to be clearly focused on truth, really. And so St. Peter, in the Acts of the Apostles today, he doesn't take on the high priest, he doesn't battle with the Sanhedrin, he doesn't try to win the argument. I've quoted Frank Duff many times. He used to say in questions of faith, win an argument, lose a soul. So it's not about scoring points. It shouldn't be about scoring points. If you're in a debating competition, sure, there's point scoring goes with all of that. Rather, it's about opening up hearts and minds to truth. Let the truth be seen, and the truth then sets us free. And again, it just brings light rather than heat. It brings the conversation to a safe conclusion. that this is not a crisis, this is a human being. And each and every one of us were this size. We were this little embryo in our mother's womb. And what a miracle we are today. And all the science that accompanies that. Let's bring it back to the facts. And at the same time, let us honestly and in the same way address the crisis that prevails in relation to allowing mothers to give birth to their children, and if needs be, and if whatever the situation demands, perhaps adopt or support in whatever other way to alleviate the crisis. And it's not just for today or tomorrow or until the baby's born. This is a long-term journey. As we know, there are marvellous pro-life groups, Ask Magella, Gianna Care here in Ireland, who do exactly that work. We've featured them many times here on the radio for you. So that's the simple just way around, is to just allow light to enter into some of these conversations rather than heat. And what you'll find in secular circles, in print and visually too, they will delight in heat. Heat will attract people to watch and to listen and to read as well. And all the more so, they try to succeed in pitching good people against each other. Then sit back and watch. You know, it's like what are those? Is it cockfighting? They kind of put two cocks into a ring, or they do it with dogs. Do they? It's terrible cruelty. But and all it is then is just for entertainment, just for entertainment. A good number of years back now, I was invited onto one of these nighttime quasi-political shows on TV. The researcher rang me up. I had a letter or two in the newspaper, and it was to do with one of the moral issues. And the researcher rang me up. I won't say who it was, which show or which station. And I just found it a very amusing conversation because, you'd be great. We need fresh, voices on our show and this and this. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. Your show has nothing to do with reason, debate, and with truth. I said, I was quite blunt with her, but in a nice way. I said, what you're doing is entertainment, and you just want me in your little circus, in your little ring, so you can eat me up and spit me out. That's all you have in mind. I was willing to go on to be eaten up and spat out just to try to make some small impression, but was advised against it in the end. And the conversation went on, this researcher, and she knew well, she didn't need me to remind her what the dynamic was. This is an entertainment show, it had nothing to do with morality per se. Morality was just the stuff they're feeding to get the pitch battle going. And I don't know who I would have been up against, but sure, listen. That's not honest, really. That's not authentic journalism, I would say. I in my view, certainly not. So these things, they get your blood boiling when you watch them. That's why I don't watch them, and I don't recommend people wasting time on these things, because that's all they do. They just raise your blood pressure and get you all riled up. And again, it's all heat. Where's the light? In the end, I used Father Benedict Rochelle. He's my favourite. I quote him quite a lot. I used his line because he, in his day, God love him, he was on EWTN an awful lot too, but used to engage in some of these debates and used to comment quite strongly and forcefully on some of these social commentators and so on. And I used his line to the researcher. I said, my mother told me I shouldn't be talking to people like him. the interviewer, the host of this show. Anyway, God between us and all harm, what do you do? That's why it's a blessing now to have something like Radio Maria, where, just in the ordinary light of truth and in ordinary common layman's terms, and just with a certain equanimity and a peaceful disposition, we can bring some of these difficult topics to you. We can invite you to participate in them, and you not need feel in any way intimidated or in any way confronted or browbeaten or any of these things. It's simply, let's discern the truth, let's bring it out to the open, let's bring the light of the gospel to shine on this, and what does it teach us then? And again, my role, I've mentioned this before, I'm on class, you know, Father, what are you doing here? What use is religion to us anyway? Why do we have to study religion? I said, look, I'm not here to force anything on anybody. It's simply an invitation to faith. An invitation to faith. And that's where St. Peter left his lovely discussion with the Sanhedrin and the high priest today in Acts of the Apostles. This is Jesus to whom we're witnessing. He's risen from the dead, whom you put to death. Sure, can't obfuscate that truth. But he's come for the forgiveness of sins. Your sins as well as mine. Peter could have added that in. That's no doubt what he meant. And so there's the truth. So whatever issues you might have, one way or the other, with the church, with, I don't know, whatever, anger we have against whoever, let the truths rest firmly there. Let the light of Christ's coming and his great mercy shine into these conversations and these discussions on morality and on faith. And that's the purpose really of this Chatechesis in that way. Just a very simple, very conversational, and very, I hope, friendly and affable and open way just to come into the truth. And I don't mind tackling some of those harder issues as you like. I'm quite happy to again address some of the difficult questions. And what we find very often again, that in some of the harder issues, there's only about 6 or 7 of the same questions that arise over and over and over again in the secular world. And what I found in my teaching days, that these would be the very things all the children would bring to school, because that's what they're hearing morning, noon, and night on the radio and on TV and on social media and their friends and everything else. Like women priests, married priests, abortion, divorce, contraception, homosexuality. What are the other ones? There's probably 1 or 2 others, but they're just repeated over and over. And the difficulty and problem with that is, again, there's a lot of heat and fomentation goes around those particular issues. Sex abuse is the other one. And they seem to come up in almost every secular conversation and article and so on. Anything I pick up, it'll one of these, one or any or all of these issues will come in somewhere to try to unsettle or upscuttle or to deflect or push away from the truth. Which is why again and again and again we must come back to Jesus, come back to Christ. That's what Peter did again in the Gospel. So if you want to, I suppose, address these things or to confront or challenge those around you, always best to avoid anything in the way of the ad hominem argument, or sort of direct, it's your fault, or you know what you should do, or here's how you made me feel, and all this. That's going to just raise the temperature. Do what St. Peter did there. He didn't raise the temperature. He said, now look, it is Christ whom we're here to serve. Obedience to God comes before obedience to men. And that has to be used too with discretion and discernment. Again, if it's a point scoring exercise, that's an exercise in futility. That's doomed to pitfalls, because it's not about winning the argument, it's about saving the soul. And that will help us then in all these conversations with loved ones, at home. Again, if you have a role in authority and so on, that we don't seek to put ourselves as on a soapbox and as the authority. We come back to Christ and his church and the teaching there that has stood the test of time and stood the test of opposition from empires for millennia. And we have that truth behind us. And taught and preached and exchanged with love and with gentleness. Let the Holy Spirit then do the rest of the work. The Holy Spirit, leave room for the Holy Spirit. Let it not be an ego trip. So I hope that helps a little bit, and it's just a way of sort of framing all of the various conversations we seek to have here and suggesting an approach. And indeed, many of you, I'm sure, will have lots more experience than I have in this regard, and I welcome your comments and your interaction. I welcome your thoughts, and maybe you have issues or situations that you're finding difficult to break through or to make headway on, why not share them with us? We're here to just support and accompany you on that, certainly, because there's quite you can bring that sort of thinking to all the various arguments and conversation topics that are there, and Aidan's put a few before me here, for introducing to Chatechesis here too. So do like, share, follow, and subscribe. Do leave a comment or two here with us, even if you're watching back on this as a repeat, or listening to this podcast. Do leave a comment there on Facebook or YouTube. Do our message us via Messenger on Facebook too. WhatsApp, our number here is 089 467 2000, 089 467 2000. Outside of the Republic here, if you're in the north, and outside of the island, is +353 89467 2000 will get to us. And +353 14123 456, our landline here, so 014 123 456. info@radiomaria.ie is again an easy way to send in a message too. And once again, if you would like to write to us, we're here at St. Anthony's Business Park, Ballymont Road, Dublin 22. Now we'll line up a little piece of music here, and Eamonn might have sent me through a little selection here. We'll have a dig in and have a dip in. So do please get in touch, do please share with us, do exchange with us. Maybe Matthew West, Aidan, is your first choice there, Truth Be Told. That seems like an appropriate, I'm sure Aidan had a hand in picking that one, because the truth sets us free. This is my point, my major point with you for this morning. The truth is what's important. Christ himself is the way, the truth, and the life. So do get in touch. Back with you again shortly after this music break. should do, I should move it this way, I think. That's better, I think. Oh, that's great to catch it. The piece really nice. I haven't heard that one before. That's nice. Some great lyrics actually in the church being a hospital. A nice few little lines there for the sick, the sinner, and the prodigal, including me. Like that. Nice one. Nice piece of music. So great. Shout out to everybody watching on Facebook. Maura's there, and Maria João Santos. That's a Portuguese name, perhaps. Angela is there too. Bernadette was in touch. She likes the way we explain things here, enjoying the program. Let's appreciate that. Thanks a million. Yeah, it's kind of my classroom voice, I suppose, or my, I don't know. I hope it's not sort of too it's not meant to be in any way patronizing or anything like that. It's my sort of style, sort of conversational, and keeping it not too. We can go into heavy theological dissertations too if we need to, but it's good to keep it at a level that everybody can feel part of it, certainly. Let me see. Do send in messages there. Mary Byrne is greeting us from Kilkenny. Caroline Lucinda is tuning in and enjoying this as well. Thanks, Caroline. Donna is heading off to work and will look back later. So hi, Donna. Later. Hope you had a good day's work. And Maura is enjoying it as well there. So nice to get all these messages. And thanks indeed. And do share it and do follow. I took down the little logo that was in the corner of the screen here, and seems to be kind of cutting across me a little bit there. It's funny, we're figuring out the camera here still and trying to work out how best to do these things. So I think it's a little improved. Eamonn is certainly happy with the statistics that we're having a little better reach through the visual element of it as well. So lamentably, in the news there, the constitutional challenge that's been put forward to the ban on public worship has been put back again, and that in the meantime the state here, or Irish government, has clarified that it is an offence, it's illegal to leave your home or to celebrate or to attend a public mass other than weddings or funerals. This really is deeply sad, a reflection, I suppose, on the secularization of our state. And I say that because are we the only country in Europe, I think, where groups are not permitted to gather to celebrate the sacraments, that churches are open for the celebration of the sacraments in the north of our own country, and it can be done safely. And if anyone's going to abide by the guidelines, it certainly will be Catholics, especially among the elderly, who will be free and able to come to Mass each day. Of course they're going to be careful, and of course those will stay at home who feel more comfortable staying at home. I don't think that's going to be an issue. So it's lamentable. It really is, and seems to be indeed to all right-minded thinking, all people of faith, to be an injustice. Yes, there's a balance that we all would agree wholeheartedly between health and preservation of life and public well-being and the common good, yes, but that religious worship, in the light of what we've learned about the virus in the last year, there's a balance surely that can be struck. So again, let truth be told in these things, and fair play to Declan Ganley, who's pursuing this and trying to push it forward, and we know indeed the bishops have been playing their part well to try to see things through too. But again, let us not leave it to people of that order, let's say people who have either the position or the authority. It's down to us too, that if we play our own respective part as citizens of the state, we have a voice too, and we should use that voice and make our concerns known and influence those whom we have elected. They're after all, they're only our representatives. They're there to serve the common good. So we have a part to play. I think it's not a good thing just to sit back and point fingers and blame others for not, for the problems. these men and women who serve us, we pray for them every day, and we ask the Lord to bless them in their role. They have a serious responsibility, but we're the ones who've elected them, and it's from our families and our communities is where they emanate from. So, again, we need to support them if it is that we have elected them, and we would certainly like to see a just and equitable solution to these things, and we certainly bring all that to prayer. But again, bringing light to the conversation each time. That's my major point for you today. Interesting question too. Aidan has put this on the table for me here. Religious practice during lockdown, and what is it likely to be after lockdown? We were chatting to quite a few of the bishops by Zoom in our work to promote. And the question came up with one of them, about the concern that will there be many return if the church is opened up in the morning? Would people return? Would there be the level of practice that we've previously enjoyed, or would we see a complete diminution of faith practice? I think it's a difficult question to answer. We are seeing some silver linings, if you want, to all of this. Radio Maria is one for sure. It's the most extraordinary blessing, and we've been just gifted really with the great task of accompanying so many people now in faith and in fellowship and in formation and in prayer in a way that would perhaps have taken an awful lot longer, or it might never, certainly it never has happened in Ireland before. So there's a blessing to count right there. And I know that many churches have installed webcams and have got up to speed with websites and Facebook, again, social media. And that's no bad thing, because we were serious as a church, let's say, in general, lagging behind in the development of our technology. And now it's come on leaps and bounds, and there's any number of apps and who knows what available to connect in with our faith. Podcasts and websites with video content and a plethora of ongoing formation and very pleasant material at that to help us on our faith journey. Brilliant. And we're simply delighted with Radio Maria to be a part of that conversation, that journey, and that companionship. Again, another massive silver lining to the whole question. And many priests, as we've learned, and maybe you've seen too, will tell of the figures, the viewership figures on their webcams are far beyond even the capacity of the church. Go figure. And that's how it used to be in days of yore. I remember well growing up in my home parish in Cork City, the droves of people. There was, let me see, let's try to remember the mass times in the morning. On a Sunday morning, I think there was 7:30, there was 9, 10, 11:15, 12. Yes, I think that's right. Every Sunday morning, 5 masses, and there was a 5:30 in the evening. Back in the day now, I'm going back 40 years, maybe more. No, 50 years. So there would have been 6 masses in the day, and you would have to get to mass early to get a seat. It was fairly well sardines in the church, and you had to stand along the wall of the church. For the later masses certainly. It was terrific. I remember bringing a friend over from England. This was back in the 80s. So where are we now? We're 30 years more ago, even back then. And he was from London, and his first time to Ireland, and he stayed over at my place, and a Catholic. And when we were going to mass in the morning, he was just flabbergasted. There's the flow of people going to mass on a Sunday morning. It was one of the later masses, and there was just people walking in cars, people parking some distance from the church, and he just couldn't get over the crowds of people on their way to mass. And he said, this must be what heaven is like. He just couldn't get over it. Now things have changed radically in those decades. They really have. But there's no reason why things should not turn back around in that direction. And we simply have to continue playing our part to be there to encourage faith practice once again. Now, we have the social media, and we're seeing large numbers clicking in and sharing in, and we're doing the same on our social media as well, and sharing and boosting posts and so on. And ostensibly, if all the figures are to be believed, again getting a lot of interaction. Now, I don't know how long or how lasting or how effective. That's anybody's guess. I mean, that would be the same anyway if people were coming to the church. Excuse me. You know, you could have a church full to the doors of people. And again, what measure of faith exactly is that? That our faith is not a numbers game. And indeed, our work here on the radio isn't about numbers, it's about souls, it's about individuals. You know, as I remind presenters here, look, there's only one pair of ears listening at a time. There might be, you know, so many listeners at a given, but there's only one pair of ears, and you know, it's your brother, your sister, your mother. I mean, just think of it in that, not to be overwhelmed by the idea that there might be, and there might not be, a large number listening at any given time. But it's one soul at a time, and that just makes the whole exchange a little bit more manageable and a little less intimidating, I hope, for those who might be new to the microphone. And if it is that you're one of those who might like to give it a try and come on and pray with us, or come on and have a little chat with us, share a little of your testimony, you know, just think of it in that way. It's just one pair of ears at a time, and it's souls that are at stake. So I could have a parish church packed to the doors with people, and how much of it is penetrating, how much of it is going in. All those crowds back in the 80s, where are they now? Are you one of those? Where have all the people gone? And will they return? I don't know. All I do know is that we need to keep praying, we need to keep faithful, we need to keep witnessing cheerfully to our faith, and let the rest to the Holy Spirit. We play our part courageously and valiantly, and we trust in God. Bill used to have that expression, trust in God, but keep rowing for shore. You know, you don't sit back and expect the Lord to do everything. So every generation has that task in hand to pass on the faith to the coming generation. So how many will return? I don't know. Are there more listening online? Absolutely. Are we seeing blessings and growth through the radio here? Amen. It's a new era, it's a new time, it's a new field. In fact, we are reaching out to the English-speaking world all over the planet. Well over 100 countries tuning into us here. You know, here and there and back and forth, because it's nighttime off in the Far East and it's early morning in the Far West. So it's a bit hit and miss. But there you are. And such is the gospel, that we sow the seeds and we let the fruitfulness to the Spirit and to the Lord. So very good. And Pope Francis, his weekly general audience here before me, explains that prayer belongs to the very essence of the Church, without which she cannot carry out her evangelizing mission and service to others. So there's our task. We keep faithful to the prayers and the breaking of bread and living in communion. That's the Acts of the Apostles. We keep faithful to that and let the Spirit then grant the increase. And you know the way that when you live your faith cheerfully and generously and openly like that, it attracts people. You know, they will know we are Christians by our love. You cannot but be attracted to that. That all the lures of this world are so superficial. I think part of the problem now is trying to get people's attention, get them to switch off whatever device they might be on, or disengage with whatever other entertainment or distraction that might be, you know, and help people to spend a little moment in silence, or to stop the activity or the frenetic running around in order to hear the voice of the Lord speaking. Which is why it's nice, again, with the social media and the digital output here, that as you are busy with something, at least there's something resonating in your heart and in your soul in the way of faith that just keeps the truth stirring, keeps the gospel stirring. That's a nice thought. So the Pope is right there. So very good. I mentioned the Mariathon a little earlier. I'll just dip in here again. It's the 15th. It's about a month's time. So just sow a little seed there, if I may. And for any who are new, our Mariathon is our moment in the year when we invite our listeners to participate and support the world project of Radio Maria. There's 85 Radio Maria stations around the world and growing, all the time growing. And speaking to Arabic countries, the Chinese Radio Maria, I think, is up and running now from Italy, trying to reach out to the Far East digitally. Indonesia is another colossal nation where Radio Maria is based and thriving. There's one station there so far. 2 stations in India, but India is a vast nation, again, 2 billion, give or take, people. Africa, it's growing in leaps and bounds across sub-Saharan Africa. Remember, I met my man from Libya the other day, saw the Arabic writing on the car, came over and said, is there Radio Maria in North Africa? Well, I said, it's the Arabic speaking Radio Maria in the Lebanon, and I think in Iraq as well. It's most extraordinary. This is a real era of just blanketing the world with the preaching of the gospel. And so our invitation at the Mariathon is for you to make a donation to support that work. That'll be next month. So the 12th, 13th and 14th of May. And on the 13th of May, because again it's an anniversary of the apparition, it's actually our birthday as well, 6th birthday. We will be broadcasting the Holy Rosary from Fatima, and that will be spread. That'll be over the whole world family of Radio Maria. There'll be millions of listeners that day broadcasting the Rosary then. That'll be a nice little highlight for our Mariathon in May. But lots and lots more about that as we go on. We'll invite our usual round of guests from the world family as well to teach us about what's happening in the world today and in the growth of Radio Maria, in spite of the circumstances in which we find ourselves. So more to come on that as we go along. And just, if I may conclude, thank you, because you are part of this project. That's where it began with this conversation. Your prayers, your sacrifices, your support, your witnessing, your sharing of this gift with others is helping to build up the church. That's a very useful use of all our energies. Instead of generating heat, let's do a lot more in the way of generating light and growth too. Now it's just coming up to 12 o'clock. Many thanks for sharing with me. Thanks for being in my company today here on Radio Maria. Do like, share, follow, subscribe, and all those things on social media as well. Help us along, boost and encourage others that we might grow and increase and spread this gentle message of prayer, catechesis, and formation the world over. Now our bells will give us a brief pause. Shane's on the mixing desk there, and we'll be back to pray with you, our Regina Celli, and our midday prayer. Thanks everybody.